in those cases, we could say that we are loving our neighbor by defending his life and his liberty against the tyranny of the government, which is precisely what happened in the... Oh, brain fart. And I haven't even had whiskey yet.
Bringing you law, gospel, and guns. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 229. And we're joined once again by our good friend, the pistol-packing Padre from St. John Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota, Pastor John Bennett. Welcome back.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you.
Well, today we are, for those of you who are new to the show, today is our Clinging to God and Guns show, where the pastor and I have, we do a variety of things. And from time to time, we like to do a segment we call Crime and the Ten Commandments, where we take self-defense or crime stories and we sort of see what lessons can be learned from them and how the Ten Commandments might apply. Well, last year we decided we'd have some fun with that and put a little bit of a twist on it, and we called it Preaching to Florida Man. I don't remember what episode that was, but we decided to go and find stories for the Crime and the Ten Commandments segment that were specific to Florida Man, that wonderful rapscallion of American lore. And I'm not sure how much theology we'll get out of these guys, but we'll at least learn some life lessons, I'm sure. But first, before we get started with that, I want to thank the men and women who support the show as members of the Reformation Gun Club. Today, I'd like to specifically thank Calroy and Mark and Brian and Mitch and Robert and John and Frank, Gavin and Scott, Melvin, and Tamara. Thank you all so much for your support, especially during these crazy economic times that we're going through. Armed Lutheran Radio, for those of you who don't know, is listener-funded. That means we don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. We rely on the generosity of our listeners, members of the Reformation Gun Club, who help us keep the lights on. Members get early access to the show every week. They get invitations to our monthly online hangouts, which is we've got to get back to, and I'm planning one in the next couple of weeks. Some cool Armed Lutheran swag and access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content specifically for members of the club. If you'd like to help keep things going here, if you value what we do, we encourage you to join them for as little as $1 a month. If you'd like to find out more, check out armedlutheran.us/gun club or look for a link in the show notes for this or any of our previous episodes. All right, we are preaching to Florida Man today, and basically what that means is we're looking at some recent crime and self-defense stories featuring that lovable rascal Florida Man to see what theological and self-defense and life lessons that we can learn from this guy.
Oh, and I looked it up. It's episode 173 from June 16th of last year.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's been a year since we visited Florida Man, and it's been too long. He's always up to interesting escapades, and there's always something that we can learn from his latest foibles. These have all been selected based on the kind of the lessons that we can learn from him, and not necessarily the theological lessons that will come out of it, unfortunately, but
usually it's
a
lesson of what not to do.
Exactly. Very, very true.
I think the last time we did this, there was a story about a guy that ended up naked in somebody's chicken coop.
Yes. And while we don't have naked guys rolling around in chicken coops, we do have some other interesting escapades. This first one comes from the Washington Examiner, and this is headlined, "Police Say Florida Man Spit on Child Wearing Mask in a Restaurant." Police arrested a man in Florida for battery and disorderly conduct after he allegedly spat in a child's face for wearing a mask. The suspect, 47-year-old Jason Copenhaver, walked up to a young boy at Ricky T's Bar and Grill in Pinellas County, Florida, on Sunday night in an intoxicated state, quote unquote, and without shoes. According to the arrest affidavit, police said he initially asked the child to remove his medical mask and then asked him to shake his hand. After the boy refused, smartly, police said Copenhaver grabbed his arm and spat in his face. "You now have coronavirus," he allegedly said to the child. Afterwards, authorities said he attempted to assault a restaurant worker, but the employee took physical control of Copenhaver and required him to wait outside until police arrived on the scene. Police are uncertain as to whether Copenhaver actually has COVID-19, though they did say he's never been tested. So,
wow.
The reason I chose this is because, we've been talking about the mask mandate for months now. Wear it or don't, just don't require people to do it. That's basically been sort of our position on it. But people clearly have gotten way out of control, very animated on both sides of the issue. This is above and beyond, where you're actually spitting on a child for wearing a mask. It's usually the other way around. It's usually the mask people who are mad at people for not wearing a mask.
Right. Although I would say I both laugh and groan when I see someone driving in their car by themselves with a mask on. That's a special kind of stupid.
Yeah. Well, hey, it could be worse. I saw a guy. We went to birthday dinner for my son down in Dallas, and we were on the Dallas North Tollway doing like 75 miles an hour. A big gigantic pickup truck passes us on our right side, just flying. He's probably doing 85. He's got both windows down and wearing a mask. How panicked do we have to be in this country to wear a mask and have the wind just whipping through your truck at 85 miles an hour?
Right, because a mask is going to stop the Rona if it just happens to creep into your truck at 85 miles an hour.
It's very dangerous on the freeways, didn't you know?
He was at more risk driving at 85 miles an hour than he would be walking into a COVID unit without a mask on.
This is true.
Sounds like he might have been trying to compete for the Darwin Awards or something.
Oh, jeez. Well, hey, we drive fast here in Texas. 75 was the speed limit. So, but still, I don't know that we have any. Aside from the fifth commandment, I'm not sure we have any 10 commandment issues here. How would you... Two things. Now, we call this preaching to Florida Man because at the end of each of these segments, at the end of each of these stories, we like to get the pastor's take on how he would counsel both the perpetrator and the victim in these cases. Let's first, how would you counsel this guy once he's locked up, if by some sorry twist he happened to be a member of your congregation? What would you say to this guy?
Well, that depends if whether it was my son's face he spit in, because if that were the case, it reminds me of that line from the Blues Brothers where the big hick redneck says to them, "You're going to look pretty funny eating corn on the cob with no bleeping teeth."
Yep. Yep.
How would I preach to this guy? Well, if he's in jail,
Because
I might consider an exorcism. I might consider an exorcism.
Right. Strap him down and sprinkle him with some holy water. Yeah, clearly we've got and because of all of the, I think, irresponsible media on both sides of this issue and all related to COVID, scaring people to death or telling people that it's all a hoax, you've got some pretty angry, animated people on both sides, and clearly this guy's got some issues. If he's he's intoxicated, that's one thing, but there's, I guess, angry drunk, maybe suggest AA or something.
Yeah, the guy definitely needs help, because if it's not the alcohol that's causing him to do this, then it's got to be a mental health issue. Right. It could be a spiritual issue too, that somebody would be so out of control of their behavior that they would go so far as to spit in a child's face. I mean, even without a pandemic, spitting in a child's face, that makes you a special kind of a-hole. It's. I thank the Lord I don't have anyone like this in my congregation. Maybe that's one of the perks of living in Minnesota. They say Minnesota nice, and everybody seems to be well behaved around here, for the most part.
Yeah, except for Minneapolis.
Yes, well, we're 100 miles from there, so yeah. But first and foremost, I would tell this guy, you need to be sincerely sorry of this and repentant of this. You need to give a sincere and heartfelt apology to this child and his family. And you need to get in control of your behavior so you don't ever do something like this again.
Yep. So, all right, let's say, how do we counsel the victim in this case? This child is, I don't know how old this child is, but this could be sort of he was already leery enough not to take the mask off and not to shake this guy's hand. So he's understands the stranger danger stuff apparently, but now stranger danger came and got him anyway. How would you counsel a child that's gone through something like this? Well,
tell him that when he becomes of age, this is a great example of why he should get a concealed carry permit. No, I'm kidding. If somebody spits in your face, the reaction shouldn't be to shoot them. It would be a good opportunity to teach him about forgiveness. We have the story of Christ's passion, where he is being spat in the face by those who are crucifying him. And what does he do? He forgives them. And so, to use this as an example of the necessity of living a life of forgiveness. Life is absolutely miserable if you spend your days dwelling on those who have done anything to harm you. Your life will be so much easier if you just let it go. It's a physical assault, especially if this guy did genuinely have the virus. Although, science is telling us that this is something that does not affect children, and children don't seem to contract this at the same rate as adults. But yeah, this is just, I was not expecting this kind of a story this evening, Lloyd. Florida man has reached a new low.
Yes.
This is, on the level of depravity, naked in a chicken coop isn't quite as bad as spitting in a child's face. So.
Yep. Well, and I wanted to, and I guess because we've spent a good deal of time talking about the pandemic and the reactions to it, this one sort of jumped out at me as an example of just the extremes to which some people are reacting. And, I think everyone needs to sort of take a step back and calm down. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask, don't freak out about it, and don't start hitting people over it, certainly, or spitting on them.
Yes.
Yep. All right, so next story is from Newsweek, which probably has the worst website I have ever seen in my life, ever. If you enjoy pop-ups that interrupt your reading constantly, then you will love Newsweek.com. It is absolutely the worst. Florida man, high on weed, accidentally killed man while playing gun scenarios, police say. Wait till you hear this.
Oh, gosh.
Sheriffs in Florida said they arrested a man Tuesday afternoon after he allegedly shot a 27-year-old man to death with whom he said he was, quote, playing defensive scenarios with guns early in the morning on August 1st. Corey Whedon, age 27, told authorities that he smoked marijuana before the shooting occurred. Sheriffs did not specify how much marijuana Whedon smoked or how much time passed between his smoking and the shooting. Whedon told authorities he owned his handgun for about a month before the incident and was approved for a concealed weapons permit in early July after completing a 6-hour training class. He's, quote, he stated he did not intend to shoot and kill the victim and it was an accident, end quote, said the report. The deadly shooting occurred about 12:50 a.m. Nothing good happens after midnight with guns.
No.
At a home in Newport Richey, a city north of Tampa in Florida's Pasco County. Now, I don't know why they bring this into it. Authorities told Newsweek that Whedon and the victim were at a shooting range prior to the incident and were cleaning their guns after they arrived at the house when they began performing, quote, defensive scenarios.
Man.
According to the report, Whedon told Pasco County sheriffs that he and the victim did not have any arguments before the shooting. Another person who was not identified in the report said that she was at the house at the time of the shooting and did not hear any arguments breaking out. So this is just stupidity. Corey Whedon stated they were playing defensive scenarios with the guns that he believed were empty, but stated for unknown reasons he loaded the gun by inserting a magazine which contained several live rounds of ammunition, the report stated. Whedon told authorities that he then pointed the gun at the victim and shot him in the chest. So now the mention of the before we get into this, the mention of the gun range is interesting because for some reason the Newsweek felt it important to put a photograph of a trap thrower in the story. I don't know why. The caption says, a trap loaded with targets is seen during a round of sporting clays at Saltwater Shooting Club amid the coronavirus outbreak in St. Augustine, Florida, which is completely a different place. According to...
And he didn't shoot the guy in the chest with a shotgun.
According to the sheriff's office, a man was arrested for allegedly shooting another man after visiting a shooting range. So they put this shooting range, their name and a photo of a trap thrower in this story as though it's related somehow to try to denigrate gun ranges. It's just stupid. Okay, now to this ridiculous story. There's not a lot of Ten Commandments stuff here because unless it's the 11th commandment, thou shalt not do stupid things in stupid places with stupid people, I can't find any real Ten Commandment stuff here. But there's definitely some gun safety issues here, right?
Well, I would say you do have a Ten Commandment issue with handling firearms while being high on weed. You know, the fifth commandment typically is you shall not murder. The question is, do we or do we not include unintentional manslaughter in that?
Yeah.
But there is... nothing goes right when you consume alcohol or in this case, narcotics, while handling firearms. You wouldn't do it getting behind the wheel of a car. Why would you do it when you've got firearms?
Right. Yep, exactly right. So, and then you've got the rule about, treating all guns as if they're loaded, and not pointing a gun at anything you don't intend to shoot and destroy, and understanding that if you're going to do if you're going to do or practice scenarios, you certainly don't want to do with a real gun, and you certainly don't want to do it while putting a magazine in the gun. That's just insanely dumb.
Yeah, and that's where I think this idiot is going to have a really difficult time getting off with the lesser charge of like third-degree manslaughter, because it took an intentional action. He claimed that the firearms were unloaded. It takes an intentional action to insert a magazine and a chamber around. It's just...
And it's already a federal offense to be in possession of a firearm while you're high on a controlled substance.
Yeah, and this is exactly why. I mean, as the old saying goes, with friends like this, who needs enemies?
Right. Yep. Now, it talks about in the story that he just got the gun a month ago, right? Now, during this pandemic and with all the craziness going on around the country, we have seen millions of new gun owners, right? People who have never owned guns before, finally seeing all this stuff and the defund police things and deciding, maybe I need to get a gun to protect myself. Whatever you do, if you're one of the new gun owners out there, if you're thinking about getting a gun, don't do this. Get some training and then practice scenarios in a controlled environment with a reputable trainer.
Yeah, I'm of the opinion that instead of making you take an 8-hour course or a 6-hour course or whatever before issuing a permit, how about just issuing a standard IQ test, and you have to score at least 100 points. I mean, 100 points is considered of average intelligence, I believe. So it's that way you're not letting. Well, I mean, we have the Second Amendment, so before anybody says that's the only legal permission that we need. Yeah, I get that, but I just don't like the idea of giving stupid people permission to lawfully carry a firearm. It just...
Yeah, the problem gets into, and there are those who would argue the same sort of thing. We should have that kind of a standard. The problem becomes, well, who judges, who's smart enough to have a gun? And then it's easy for people to say, oh, well, only the Mensa people need guns, and you and I are out.
Yeah,
we've now lost our rights.
If you've ever met any of those Mensa folks, I mean, they might be book smart, but they're street stupid.
The kind of people who would actually hurt themselves with a gun.
Yeah, for all we know, this might have been a Mensa guy, who knows?
Right. We'll have to dig deeper to find out, has this guy got a Mensa card or not? I seriously doubt it, though. All right, this next one is along the same lines. This one comes from Fox News. Florida man arrested after waving loaded gun in one hand and holding beer in the other, deputies say. Florida man was arrested Saturday after worrying citizens who spotted him walking down a road while waving a gun in one hand and holding an alcoholic beverage in the other. Deputies responded to reports of a man pointing a gun at vehicles driving along a street in Wilmalma, about 30 miles southeast of Tampa. So this is the other direction, in Hillsborough County. Deputies said 66-year-old Eric Ricardo Felder was holding and carelessly waving a loaded .38 Smith & Wesson revolver in one hand and a Blue Moon beer in the other.
At least he has good taste in beer. I'll give him that.
That's true. That's true. They have a picture of the gun laying next to the bottle on the bumper of a car. I guess one of the police cruisers. It almost looks like a shot from a commercial or something. It's like, hey, have a beer and a gun. Go shooting with your buddies with a Blue Moon beer.
Isn't that how like every leftist pictures the average gun owner?
That's absolutely
maybe not
right.
Blue Moon, maybe like Bud Light.
Bud Light,
beer flavored
Pabst.
water is what I call it, but
right.
Yeah.
Felder was taken into custody without incident, the sheriff's office said. He faces multiple charges, including felon in possession of a firearm, 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, use of a firearm while intoxicated, improper exhibition of a dangerous weapon, and resisting arrest without violence. Now, I'm not sure what that means. I guess he just didn't want to be handcuffed. I'm thankful that our deputies were able to quickly locate Mr. Felder and arrest him without anyone getting hurt, said the sheriff. Threatening the safety of others and putting innocent citizens' lives at risk is unacceptable and will not be tolerated in Hillsborough County. Now, what's interesting, and if you're not familiar with the story, and the reason that part of the reason that I included this story is, despite the national media and leftist narrative about police, Mr. Felder, who is black, was arrested without incident.
Yeah.
He wasn't killed by the police, despite having a gun.
He had a gun
and resisting arrest.
Yeah.
Worst cops ever.
Man.
How is it that...
Racist pigs, I gotta tell you. I don't buy that use of that phrase. I don't by any means intend any offense to members of law enforcement. I have a high respect for members of law enforcement. But especially after this, because he would have had every right to shoot the guy.
Well, they did say he resisted without violence, whatever that means. So apparently, I guess he did not point the gun at the police. So here's an example, and this is a story that the national media would completely ignore. One, you were talking about how the picture of the average gun owner is a guy with a beer in one hand and a gun in the other. Well, this guy is black, not exactly the picture that the media has in their minds of what gun owners look like.
You mean he wasn't wearing a Trump 2020 T-shirt?
I did not see one in the mugshot, so they didn't. I'm not sure. I'll have to go back to the story and double check. Now, there's the old joke that ATF, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms ought to be a store and not a government agency.
Yeah.
This guy clearly was, thinking along those lines and mixing his fun and not in a good way. What life lessons can we learn from this escapade by Florida man?
Well, I would want to go back in his life and find out, one of the charges is felon in possession of a firearm. So what's his criminal history like? What led to him going down the wrong path in life so that he became a felon? See what's gone wrong in his life and try and point him to Christ, who gives us a reason for living a life that gives glory to him. I'm also curious, after you told me what the title of the story was, I typed that into my search engine, and he had 2 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So in the midst of his stupor, as he's doing something incredibly stupid, he did manage to assault. I guess that's meaning that he assaulted 2 people or the same person on, twice. I don't know. I'd be curious. I don't know whether
they're counting him pointing the gun at someone as assault, but I don't.
Could be.
If he didn't, I don't know. There's no more mention in this story of the assaults except that that's what he was charged with, but there's no mention of him actually physically assaulting someone. So I don't know whether they're counting his. Well, then they say that he resisted arrest without violence, so he didn't assault the police officers.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that charge is coming from. Based on this story, we don't know.
Right. And I'd also be curious to know if the firearm was loaded.
It was.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yes.
I didn't catch that part. Okay.
Yes. Yep.
So incredibly, incredibly stupid.
Yeah, again, being under the influence of alcohol or drugs while handling a firearm, incredibly dangerous, incredibly stupid. Alcohol and firearms just don't mix. As much as we like to joke about the ATF thing,
Right.
it's not it's not a good idea to get drunk and then wander around with firearms. Obviously, this is a guy who's got some issues in his life, got some problems. It's probably safe to say some mental health issues here. Again, how would you counsel this guy?
Well, I would assume he's probably not the kind of person that's a faithful churchgoer. He needs to get right with the Lord, especially if he's going to do stupid stuff like that could end up getting him shot.
Right.
You know, and if he's doing something like this, I'm also assuming that there is probably a history of alcohol abuse. Yeah. What a piece of work. See, this would be the kind of thing that would make me wish I was a plumber instead of a pastor, or someone like this was my church member.
Get that call on Sunday. Hey, pastor, and I'm in jail again. You'll never guess what for this time.
Oh, man.
All right. So we got one more. We're going to save this one for the Reformation Gun Club members. So if you would like to hear one more story from Florida Man for this week's episode and lots of other exclusive content, be sure to check out the Reformation Gun Club at armedlutheran.us/gun club. Pastor, thank you so much for doing this again. We really, it's always fun to find out what Florida Man is up to.
Yes, and thank you, Florida Man, for continuing to be the running joke of the country. It's appreciated.
Yes, the gift that keeps on giving. Folks, if you have any questions, any comments, any thoughts about what you heard on today's episode, please visit our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, and answer any questions that you might have in a future episode. Next week is going to be episode 230, and it will be another of our variety show episodes with content from the entire cast. Pastor Bennett, Bill Sylvia, our resident competitive shooting expert, and our hunting guide extraordinaire, Mia Anstein. They'll be with us again next week. I hope you'll join us. Until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
John Bennett is the pastor at St. John's Lutheran Church in Willow Creek, Minnesota. For more information, visit stjohnswillowcreek.org. For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback or a review on iTunes and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.